Welcome to Deal Playbook, the show where we decode the real strategies of leverage behind scaling, acquiring, and exiting. I'm Tom Shipley, and after building and selling 16 companies, generating over $2 billion in sales, raising hundreds of millions in capital, and leading through chaos and opportunity, I've learned one thing. Success doesn't come from playing harder, it comes from playing smarter. Every episode, we will break down tactical frameworks, investor insights, and mindset shifts that move you from deal hunter to deal architect. This is your insider's guide to creating exponential growth and wealth through leverage, capital, and connection. Welcome to Deal Playbook. Let's get to work.
In this business, the greatest tool for anybody watching this video or any video in the future is due diligence. Check who you're doing business with. Two places, Google, easy, LinkedIn, go to the recommendations of LinkedIn and look at the people there. If it's their cousin or their mother and they gave them a great, but if there's none, that tells you something. And if there are some, then who are they from? Are they from past clients? Are they from past people that you've helped? Right? You go to mine on LinkedIn, it's past employees, it's past business partners, it's past businesses that I bought and sold. It's a plethora of people. So doing due diligence saves you the process. And if you're brand new at selling your very first business, due diligence is your best friend so you don't get time and money wasted.
Very excited to welcome to the Deal Playbook, Jason Sisneros. Understand that Jason started his career with Tony Robbins and is a battle-tested chairman renowned as one of the brightest minds in business and innovation. He's helped over 100 plus small to mid-cap businesses scale or exit. And his work with giants like Nike, Comcast, Microsoft. He's created the proprietary built-to-exit system. Jason is sought after by business owners as a trusted resource for building that competitive edge that every business needs. He currently owns multiple businesses, has personally exited more than a dozen companies, and has spoken on stages around the world. And something really cool that we'll dig into a little bit tonight is that he also supports the child rescue operations with certain ministries and has championed ethical capitalism as a force for freedom. With that, really excited to welcome my friend, Jason Sisneros.
I'm glad to be here, Tom. Thank you so much for having me. Ever since we've met, it has just been one magical moment after another. It's, coming to your event, and I'll just start this off. I don't want to take over your show, but I'll tell you, I came and sat at DealCon in the audience. And I want people to know that I don't do that anymore. That's something that I don't sit in audiences very often anymore, right? I'm usually at the front on stage, but I came because of who introduced me to you, your reputation, a lot of people in this space, right? The M&A space, deal making space, that kind of thing. It's a very dark pool of people, and there's bright lights of ethical capitalism that I see. And I wanted to see that from you before we really launched off on our relationship. And I'm really blessed that I did. And the reception from your wife, from you, from Ayelet, your beautiful daughter, who's very, very talented as well. And I believe that a person's audience speaks more loudly of them than they do or their marketing does. And the people that were in the audience were incredible. Real deal makers, real business owners, real people that were looking to buy companies and do M&A stuff. And everyone had such a profound respect for you and what you've done and your career. So I was glad that I did that. I'm happy. I've been excited and pumped up about having this conversation with you, and really excited to come and speak at your event in September.
Spending time with you at the event, and you and Emily, who's also a force to be reckoned with, was a true honor. And therefore, Jason is actually going to be our keynote kicking off day one, which for those people that I guess you'll find out during this interview, as far as the magic and the insights that Jason can bring. So very excited about that. So pleasure. Maybe we'll jump into it, and we'll just start with what you're doing now.
Boy, oh boy, that's a that's a big chunk. So you mentioned the rescues. I'll give a little bit of a history to catch people up to kind of where I'm at. I started with nothing. My adopted father, when I was younger, he went to prison for attempted murder of me and my mom when I was 17. Lots of years of abuse before then. This beautiful nose that I have has been all over my face. A lot of moving around, because he was a pretty bad guy. And after that, there was a choice to be made. And it's like the people that are watching, we're all born with whatever we've been given as a family. Like we don't choose it, but we're all born. My story is just my story, but I feel like that's what ties your audience, my audience, the people that we hang out with, is that we have very similar stories in that we weren't handed everything on a silver platter when we were born, no matter what that entailed. I was the same way. My adopted father, again, went to prison, left me. Really, that was my upbringing, was you have to survive. Don't trust anybody. Most of my friends are either dead or in prison. And that's the road that I was headed down. But it was mentors. And that's what I loved most about the energy at your event. It's mentorship, people reaching into your life, and what I've seen you do and other people in the event, you reach into their lives, and it's not about, hey, how much of a check can you write me? It's how can I serve you at the highest level? And then if business develops from that, so be it. Right. And it was the same way when I was coming up. I had some football coaches, some wrestling coaches that just seeded into my life. And they were like, there's another side of this. You don't have to be this guy. I was a collector. That's what I knew. I'd been fighting a full grown adult my entire life. And starting at 16 years old, I was collecting from people that didn't pay their drug money. That was what I knew. It was cash accounting, by the way, Tom. That's how it was cash accounting.
And you're in charge of accounts receivable.
That's right. Accounts receivable. That was me. And, but I got leadership, and it was men specifically in my life that I was like, wow, I want to be like them. I want to have the things that they have. I want to be respected, not feared, right? Because I knew how to make people fear me. But I wanted to be respected. I wanted to build a respectable life. And it was the birth of my son, my first son, that really changed things for me. I got out of that lifestyle, went in, I never graduated from high school, and I didn't know what to do. And that's where I think a lot of business folks and a lot of people in life find themselves. It's like, I know I want my life to be different, but I don't know how. I don't know what to do next. And this thing called owning a business is so precious. It's so different than any other, like even the snapshot of life, the fact that we're, in America, around the world, of people that own businesses. It's such a blessing for decentralized power for us to be able to control our life, for us to be able to face down that person in the mirror and overcome those things and be able to be rewarded for serving other people. It's very biblical. Right? It's very biblical if you run ethical capitalist behaviors. And so that's really what I learned. I learned from great men. I learned from great women. I learned that I wanted to turn my life around. And that started my walk into owning businesses. And the first 3 that I owned, I crashed miserably. I went bankrupt in all 3 of them. So the very first one was a carpet store. It was and that's because my very first job, legit job, was peeling logs, the stuff off logs for log cabins. And then I worked for my father-in-law at the time, 3 stories down in a mine, and I was digging out sumps. Then that's when I was like, yeah, I know I don't have an education, but I got to do something different than this. I'm down here digging in the mud and, without daylight for 8 or 9 hours a day. That's when I decided to pick up a trade, and that trade just so happened to be laying carpet. I was an assistant. And that led into that stream. And then so I ended up buying a company. That was my very first one. Second one was a real estate. Third one was a gym. And like a typical entrepreneur, I did really, really great with the carpet store, and then put that money into real estate. And then that real estate money, I put that into a gym, and the gym just sucked all that money out. I didn't really know what I was doing, Tom. I was a gregarious guy that people liked and would buy from me. I didn't know receivables, operations, proper use of cash. I didn't know any of that stuff. So when the economy took a little dip, bam, 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 it was all three of them went out of business. It felt like 152 years, but the amount of time that it actually took was about 14 months. So it fell apart really fast. And I did, oh my God, I was going I lost my wife. I went through a divorce. I lost my house. I lost my mind, really. People, that's why I am so passionate about business. Business owners are like, I'll just file bankruptcy if this doesn't work. Boy, oh boy, it was 6 years, Tom, for me to get back on my feet. I was $2 million in debt. It took 6 years. I left town. I was like literally one of the next people in line to be the mayor of the town that I was living in. I was so embarrassed. My identity was completely shattered. I was going through a divorce. And now I'm like, what worth am I? I have no value to this earth. And it drove me into a place of homelessness. I left there in the middle of the night. I stole a U-Haul pickup truck and put whatever I had left, because they were coming to get my house the next day, and I took whatever I could put in that car and I drove to California from Colorado. And, if that money eventually ran out and those things that I could sell eventually ran out, and I ended up on the beach, for about 3 months as a homeless man. And so the next thing, long story, to move this forward, my next job was selling cars. And boy, oh boy, did I hate that. And I suggest to people a lot of times, do something that you learn how to sell, because that's a great skill set to have, but also do something that you hate to do. So you're going to have to make enough money to get away from it, right? And that's what put me in contact with Tony Robbins. I went to a Tony event, and I had this credit card that didn't have enough money on it, right, to go to Master University and all this other stuff. But I put it on there on this card and got to shake Tony's hand. And I told him, I go, because I knew he had transformed my life in those 3 days. And I said, I'm going to pay you back someday. And he goes, I believe you. And what I heard was, I believe in you. And really, as a human being, isn't that all you need to hear sometimes from somebody that you respect and look up to? Is I believe in you. And that really pushed me forward. I got to travel with Tony as one of his top speakers for years. And instead of wanting to become the next Tony Robbins, which I think a lot of people that work for him do, I wanted to get in proximity of people who could tell me what I did wrong in my bankruptcies. And I spent time with incredible names and business owners that I never, ever would have been able to get in front of had it not been for Tony's foot in the door, or his big fingers, open those doors. Yeah. It's, it's going from failure to failure with great enthusiasm. And the concept behind it is that most people are trying to avoid failure, when the only way you're ever going to get better at anything ever is that you fail at it first. Right. And that's the concept. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I want the failures to be smaller than losing my house, going through a divorce, stealing a U-Haul truck. Exactly. And being homeless on the beach. I want them to be smaller. So with enthusiasm, I'm like, I'm trying this. And it's with an end game in mind. And I think that's what most people skip, is getting crystal clear. I can't wait to talk to your audience, because there's a lot of things I've learned about this, when we get together. But very few people even know why they're playing the game of life. They don't know, right? And so how do you build towards something that you have no idea what the end game is? And I see this with billionaires, I see it with multimillionaires, I see it with people who are broke, I see it with people who are just starting a business, that have been in business for 10 years, that are running a third generation business. This is an epidemic of us living such a short-sighted life that we don't really know how to connect one action to the next, and what drives us passionately and those types of things. So wonderfully, I've had great leadership and guidance, and being around people of your wisdom and Tony's wisdom and some of the great mentors of my life, to be able to get some of that straight. What a great question. Here's what I would tell my younger self, besides invest in Apple stock. What I would say to my younger self would be the concept that I actually live by these days, which is nobody cares. And let me explain a little, because some people take that as harsh. I don't mean it as harsh. When you get to know me, I'm all heart. Like I love people. But the concept is that when I realized this was that most of the things that we do, especially men for our women, right? But in general, what we're doing is we we wake up in the morning and we put on all of the stuff that everybody around us thinks they know about us, because one of the things that we think is necessary is for us to be consistent and trustworthy and be able to be counted on, right? Those three things don't have anything to do with being the same person you were yesterday, by the way, right? So now I look at that and I go back in my earlier life and I was like, everything that I was ever doing was for my family to, being the same person my family wanted me to be, my friends, the gangsters that I was running around with, being the scariest one and all these other things. Instead of figuring out, oh, I'm doing all of this because of what other people think of me. And Tony Robbins had a watershed moment with him when he looked at me one day. I was talking to him about something, and he said, "Jason," he goes, who loves you the most on the planet?" And I go, "Oh, my mom, hands down. Like, my mom loves me like you wouldn't believe." I was just so happy and so proud to tell him. He goes, "What do you think she's thinking about right now?" And I go, "What what is that? Why is that relevant?" And he goes, "What do you think she's thinking about?" And I'm like, "Just get to the point, Tony. Tell me what you're trying to tell me." And it dawned on me right when I said that, I go, "Oh, she's not thinking about me. She's got her own stuff going on." And that shifted my world so dramatically to go, "Oh my God, I've lived my entire life based on what other people think, and they're not even thinking about me." Right? So to go back and tell my younger self, "Hey, nobody cares. Like, people care about each other. I care about you. You care about your wife. I care about my wife. We care about things in the world, but nobody really actually cares. And the people that care about, they're sitting out there waiting for you to fail because you make them feel bad because of who you are and what your success looks like, right? Those are the wrong people to have in your life in the first place. I want cheerleaders in my life. I know that if I call you up and I go, "Tom, I made the most incredible deal today," what am I going to get from Tom? "Good job. Did you structure it correctly? What is your taxes going to be like? Like, who can I put you in touch with? Blah, blah, blah." It's going to be celebration and service to each other. And I have found that to be one of the greatest lessons that I ever learned, was that nobody cares. So stop acting like they do. It's unbelievable way to look at it, brother. Yeah. Yeah. And it's because of things, you're in the arena, right? It's interesting. I heard the other day, because I always like to consider, and I still feel this way, but people that are around me become my family. I'm a very protective guy, and I don't like bullies, which has led me to do the trafficking work that I've done, and all the stuff. Even Built to Exit is really an act of service to small and mid-sized companies getting bullied. It really it's a passionate place to be in defense. And when you think about it, like, one of the concepts that really shifted for me from a mentor of mine said, "It's not a family. Our business is not a family." Because when you do say that, it's like, "Oh my God, I can't fire my brother. I can't fire my mother. I can't fire my sister." We're not actually a family. What we are is a championship team. What a difference, right? What a difference. Now you can look at a championship team, and sometimes that, something happens and there's a better team or whatever, and they go to the bottom of the rankings. And that's kind of what happens to us in business. There are 1,000,005 things that can go wrong in a business, and very narrow window of them going right all the way through, not just inception, not just optimization, not just aging out, not and into sale, but post sale. As a business can be gone like that for something you could not foresee. 9/11, for all of the different things, that COVID, they can disappear. And we as business owners, we take that and we say, I heard another piece of advice that I really heard was, I am not my business is not me. This goes directly to your point of shame, right? My business is a machine that creates cash. And some machines break down and some machines produce really well. How good of an architect are we to build that machine to be able to withstand the elements? And what is the elements? The elements are your competition. It's a 9/11 happening. It's unseen. It's taxes. It's who's in the White House. It's all of those things. But the machine has to be built to navigate through that. That has nothing to do with who I am as a human being. I built the best machine. Some of them make it, some of them don't. Any business owner has told me that they've got 100% track record is a liar. They're a liar. So I'd rather deal with somebody who messed up and is honest about it, because then you learned. Right? One of the great things that the United States did was offer bankruptcy. Why? Because there's 10% of us that are crazy enough to identify DNA level as being a merchant, an entrepreneur, a business owner. We are built differently. And they know that if you're going to have a productive country, that you have to protect them. And somebody that like me who failed 3 times, you'd think, learn my lesson. I'm going to go get me a job and pack me a little lunch and get off at noon and go home at 1 and get right? No, I want to go do this again because we're insane.
Entrepreneurs were built differently. We would do nothing else. And it's not about the pursuit of money. That is just a measurement along the way. There's just playing really the game. And for me is I'm looking for meaning, which means impact, love, adventure, and enthusiasm. And this is what drives me. And that's why I love this game. And if you look at the DNA entrepreneur is the money is nice measurement of how we're doing, but up or down, win or lose, it is the game. We love to be in the arena, as you said.
Yeah. It's crazy. Mark Andreesen said it best. He said, if you are an entrepreneur, you can't not be an entrepreneur. And our roots go deep. There would be nothing if it wasn't for merchants. Like I go back to merchants. I go back to that. I study old deals. I study old companies but we're all from the same, cut from the same cloth. And without merchants, there's no airplanes, there's no houses, there's no air conditioning, there's no refrigeration. There is no nothing without us. And again, I always like to wrap this into, and this is what I can't wait to go deeper into at your event. But as an entrepreneur, it's that part of that DNA, and we think it's about making money, but it's about so much more. And what makes it, like I heard somebody say this before that said, it's not what I don't want to think about the things that keep me up at night. I want to think about the things that make me jump out of bed in the morning. And so as a scoreboard for what I do in business, I know that for every $3,500 that I can produce, that is going to free a child, right? There's 10 million children that are in either sex or labor trafficking situations around the world. That is an insane number to me, right? When I very first started giving back as a philosophy, it was in domestic violence because that's what I grew up with. All those broken noses were from me stepping in front of my mom and taking her beatings as often as I could. And along the way, I got invited to a trafficking fundraiser, and Tom, it broke me in a way, because I've been around a lot of crime, I've been around a lot of abuse, I've been around a lot of stuff, but that in particular struck me as evil, like deep evil. And I went live the next day and said, I went to this event. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. And therein lies that purpose that drives an entrepreneur. That sentence. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. And then we start to realize that this machine that we own called a business produces one of the greatest weapons to ease suffering in the world. And that's called money. And that money is particularly called free cash flow. You can take it off the table without it impacting the operating of your business. And so the more free cash flow that your business creates, the more suffering you can ease in whatever you're passionate about. Could be pets, could be veterans, could be feeding people, could be trafficking. Mine was trafficking. And then I also got invited to go undercover. One of the guys knew my upbringing and I'd been raised in a pretty rough background. And he said, we could use like somebody like you on the team to go undercover and go rescue some kids. And I was like, hell yeah, put me in, coach. That was 10 years ago. You might see that movie that's floating around out there. It's called The Sound of Freedom. It was Operation Underground Railroad. That was the team that I rescued with at the time. And so we brought Tony Robbins in. I think I showed you the picture of Tony Robbins undercover. He went undercover with us. He started raising millions of dollars for the subject. And then I left that organization and found CERT Ministries, who I find, they're just, they every penny, every breath that they take, they are literally living, breathing, rescuing kids all day, every day. That's all they do and all they think about. And they don't think about movies or books or fame or fortune or anything of that nature. And so I fit really well with them. I've been with them for the last 6 years. We've done, we put on, my wife and I put on bulletproof vests and we go get kids. And we don't care where they are and we don't care what they look like. They don't care what color they are. We don't care if their families have money, don't have money. We don't care if anybody ever finds out about the rescues that we're working on. But I find that drives me in everything that I do. That I still have a big passion for domestic violence. And then I'm also the chairman of an organization called Feed a Billion, which is a place where I think both trafficking and domestic violence start is food insecurity. So we try to address it from that perspective as well. And those are the things that I love doing. I'll do those till the day I die. Okay.
Okay, Jason. So we're going to pivot a little bit. And what I really want to go into is you've done so many acquisitions, acquiring businesses in different types of businesses, different industries, had a number of exits, and you created some really good playbooks for both. So what we'll start with is tell us a little bit about your acquisitions, your first one, and then how did that progress? And then we'll jump into exits and some exit stories.
Absolutely.
Lessons.
Yeah, it's interesting. The stories, as you know, they're so valuable to us as an individual. And then to be able to learn from other people's deals. I spend so much time diving into as many public deals as I possibly can, because you always learn something, and so I'll tell you, my very first acquisitions were where I didn't know anything. It was literally just a bunch of ambition, and being really good at sales, and then having somebody on the other side of the deal. The very first business that I ever bought was a gentleman who thought the company was going out of business and brought me in to have somebody to blame on it going out of business. He brought me in as a partner, and there was this 5-year buyout, et cetera, et cetera. Well, little did he know, I was too stupid to realize that his business was not something I should have bought and that it was supposed to fail. Right. Mm-hmm. So, but I bought that company. I took 5 years, and in that 5 years, what I did was I would install carpet on the weekends to make my payment. And then during the week, I would make sales and build the business during the week. So, yeah, so that was my very first one. And by the way, there's 3 types of exits that I believe that people should be paying attention to. One is involuntary, right? We talked about that a little bit at the beginning of the show. And that involuntary exit is not, I don't want to go out of business. Nobody wants to go out of business. However, 95% of people do. Forget the mergers and acquisitions business for a second. How about just the staying in business for a minute, right? Being 95, one of the 5% that stays around for 10 years or longer. And so that business that I acquired.
Oh, by the way, most people don't. I'm going to just pause on that for a second.
Yeah.
What I like to share with business owners is, what is the probability that basically I'm congratulating a lot of business owners that their success and entrepreneurs. What's the probability that they're going to be in business for 5 years? What's the probability that they're going to be in business after 5 years and have over $1 million in sales, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million? We're getting to an infinite percent. What we're really missing in the story is the reason why is that 95% of companies will go out of business involuntarily. So And it has, and which is really strange because there's a stigma out there. If you have a business and eventually just has an amazing run and then goes out of business, there's this stigma and this shame associated to it where almost all the businesses do.
Yeah. Well, and there's only shame, because you think about, like, one of the things, the government gets very little right. Right? Very little do they get right because they're lawyers and they're politicians and they're like second-rate actors is basically what they are. But however, what they did get right, or here in America, especially, what they did get right was the bankruptcy laws, right? To protect those of us, because we don't know what to. The only thing we're going to do is go, oh, I failed at it, I'm going to go do it again. we're that 10% of us. We're that. I don't call it dumb, but I want to say it's embedded in our DNA. We're not going to quit. We're going to go back at it again. And so the bankruptcy laws protect us for that. Now, the only real stigma should be if you go out of business and you don't learn anything, because I mean, there's in business there are people who are disingenuous and dishonest, and they're not gentlemanly in their interactions. So they go, they screw people over to blah, blah, blah. It's just, that's their realm. But most people aren't like that. I would say 90% of people that own businesses are very upstanding, want to do the right type thing people. And so when we do fail, and as I had back to back, I had 1, 2, 3, like dominoes, because they were all kind of connected. As a normal business owner, we get bored with one thing, let's go start another thing. We're making way too much money, let's go throw it away on this other project. Right? And so that was my first run at it. And then I learned, really the second when I came back from that, the idea was, I learned from a lot of people. I got to travel around with Tony Robbins. I got to, really learn from some of the most amazing Jay Abrahams, the Keith Cunningham, my mentor. I was on his chairman panel for 10 years, like next to him. I got a picture of me sitting next to, like, at the foot of the master, right? This is the Rich Dad and the Rich Dad Poor Dad books. This is a rich dad, the actual rich dad. And so I had these amazing people. So the second time around, I built something of value, and I said, okay, the game really is to exit. Like, everybody exits. How matters? Everybody exits. That's the number one thing that any business, if anybody watches your show and comes away with one phrase that sticks in their mind, it's everybody exits. So you might as well prepare for it, right? Make it your own. So the second time I did that exit, it was with a private equity firm that knew exactly what they were doing, right? Imagine I'm going in to buy my first car. Who am I sitting across for? Not somebody who's sold one car, somebody who sells 30 cars a month, right? Who's going to win in that equation? The guy with 30. Yep. And so the private equity guy, I call this a dictated exit. So you've got involuntary, then you've got dictated. And this guy wiped the floor with me because I was so proud. I built something that somebody wants to buy, and and that was the pride that they played off of to get me to agree to a ridiculous price and paying me over 3 years, and me basically having to work harder for those 3 years than I did the 3 years prior to pay myself for them buying my business. Okay? That's a dictated exit. Great. I still sold. I still made money. I was still but there was this magic formula that I was looking for. And this is what I dove in. And now what I focus on is called a custom tailored exit. We're going to talk a lot about that at your event, right? They're my high level clients and people that we actually help sell. And in our own life, my wife and I are buying and selling businesses all the time. This is private information. I'm bringing it to your event for the people who are going to be there. But here's what I will tell you about the custom tailored exit. I studied that private equity firm that wiped the floor with me on my dictated exit. I studied how they acquired businesses. I then studied every single acquisition I could find in the public market. I talked to every private person that I could talk to. And I said, how do people want to buy the company? And then that's where I focused. So then I go back and I go on each business that I've owned. whether it was commercial car wash, commercial janitorial, HVAC, whatever companies I happened to own at the moment, I was building on two tracks. I fell in love with the outcome of the target audience for the product and service. That's how I optimized cash flow. That's how I made cash flow predictable. That's how I got my numbers correct. That's how I got my management team in place. That's how I got my pro forma adjusted EBITDA built, was on the basics of that business. Second track was, I am building this. If everybody exits, how matters, the next person that I'm focusing on, that second track, is who's going to own that business after me. How do they want to buy it? Same exact principles of how you build a successful business is the same principles, different target audience of how you build to exit. Mergers and acquisitions today, and you know this to be true, is full. Like, you go back 10, 15 years, there was, I don't know, 1,500 private equity firms. Most of them were pretty good, but that top 500, oh, excellent at what they did. Great teams of people, knew the information. Nowadays, you've got like 7,000 private equity firms, and you have about 7,000 people per weekend graduating from somebody's M&A, how to buy a business for no money down per weekend. So the market is flooded with idiocy, right? And I say this because that's great. The more dumb people in the marketplace, the more people who are inadequate, the more people who aren't professionals like you and your board and the people that are doing this correctly and ethically, the more we stand out in a crowd, right? When we're doing mergers, acquisitions, I know a ton of private equity people. They're not jokes. They're not the ones that just graduated that day. I do know some single buyers for family home offices and stuff, but for the most part, that's where we focus on our side with our clients, is getting them prepped up for their ideal buyer. Now you do that and you can preset the 10 you want fighting over the price. And there's a very methodical, and we're going to go through that at your event, very methodical way that you do that. I have a 52-week system that I followed myself, right? That we built. It's 52 weeks. People are like, hey, I want to sell my company, blah, blah, blah. In their mind, they think in 3 months, it's going to be gone. We're going to be good. No, you should plan 3 years ahead of your exit to be prepping it up on purpose. We'd go through 52 weeks of prep. And a lot of times when my wife and I and my team buy a business, what we do is we've got 13 weeks of optimization training. And that's with my team, who knows exactly what they're doing. They go in and they fix everything with the business that we bought. Then we go into 52 weeks of exit prep. And so then in that amount of time, there's a certain amount of time where you go, all right, here's the top 5 buyers. There's going to be some ancillary 5. I want 10 people knowing that I've got prepped up my company and that it's going to be ready for sale. Now we've got a little bit of a reputation. We don't have to go all over the place, right? We go into specific areas, and that's where we focus.
Let me just go back a little bit. You buy a business.
Yep.
Do you typically have the owner roll, or is the owner gone?
The owner, it depends. It depends on the situation, as it always does. But I typically want the owner there. Look, the dictated exit, for me, they won. That private equity firm won. So now that I know how to sell, also I know how to buy.
Yes.
So I want that owner carrying as much of the debt as possible. I want them to stick around and maintain those relationships for as long as possible, right? Mm-hmm. I want the drama to be really low as it's transitioning, almost as if nothing has happened. And then you start to slow roll those changes into the program.
Well, and that's my question. So you have your team. Again, this is a challenge with a lot of acquisitions, just in playbooks. Some people's playbook is they do nothing. They're there for support and they do nothing for 30 days, or they do nothing for 6 months. Other people, day one playbook, let's go on and let's start optimizing. Yeah. Again, so pros and cons to both. Your playbook and understanding when you go in and start optimizing someone else's business, you have the whole team saying, It can either go two ways. So what's your approach, Jason?
Well, we have a culture, and it really is. It's like we look at things, and I can't remember where I heard it, so don't remember. It's not coming from me. This is not my quote, but I heard it, and it made a big difference in my life. Where a lot of people in business say, "This is my family," and I really do look at people that work around me and with me, and I look at them as my family. But we're not really a family. We're a championship team. And so when we come in, there's already a big wave of knowledge of who we are, and so we're coming into whether it's cannabis, right? Or whether we're coming into HPC or whether we're coming into the medical world or whatever it is, it's not hey, we're going to have one cannabis location. It's you're joining the Cisneros championship team. Right? You may start working at that one location, but there's this and this and this and this. So when we come in, it's not easy for me to come in quiet because everybody knows about me, right? All you got to do is Google. And so now now what we have to do is we have to set that culture and be really conscious of anybody that calls themselves a member of my team, how they conduct themselves business wise, how they conduct themselves in their private lives, how they conduct themselves everywhere, because that is a reflection of a possible deal tomorrow, 5 years from now, et cetera, et cetera. So when you ask me my approach, it's a culture issue. I want everybody to know that we're acquiring this business and you are becoming part of a Cisneros organization, which means more accountability, better performance. You're probably going to get paid more than you ever have as an employee. You're probably going to have more benefits. You're probably going to have an opportunity to start your own thing, right? So we come in very loudly. Nothing's going to change except for over time, it's going to get better for you. And we have lots of history to demonstrate that. Lots of conversations. Like in this business, the greatest tool for anybody watching this video or any video in the future is due diligence. Check who you're doing business with. 2 places, Google, easy, LinkedIn, go to the recommendations of LinkedIn and look at the people there. If it's their cousin or their mother and they gave them a great, but if there's none, that tells you something. And if there are some, then who are they from? Are they from past clients? Are they from past people that you've helped? Right? You go to mine on LinkedIn, it's past employees, it's past business partners, it's past businesses that I bought and sold. It's a plethora of people. So doing due diligence saves you the process. And if you're brand new at selling your very first business, due diligence is your best friend so you don't get time and money wasted.
That's amazing. I look at different people's models from what you do after day one. And I'm going to say the extreme of that is people know this from Mark Limonis, right?
Mhm.
What he does in The Profit is he is not shy. He goes in there and it is a different business and he goes into really transform that business and people, that's what their expectation is. A lot of sellers love what they're doing, very proud of their culture and everything. And so by inserting yourself there, they said, I didn't get in here to have a boss telling me what to do, all these changes. The team freaks out. A lot of time there's an exit towards the doors, could be go. So again, there's a balance. If you get it right, there's a huge return on the investment. If you get it wrong, you've put at risk your big investment you just did for an acquisition.
Well, and I think it's such a great point that you bring up, Tom, because to me, I live in the world of and. I don't live in the tyranny of or. And so for me, I've taken the bet, and again, it's just been, me getting my tail handed to me and taught real lessons that cost me real money. When I very first started to do that transition, it was like, we're coming in. 2 energies, right? Which we're coming in. This is a Cisneros company and screw you and what you used to do, and we would lose people by the boatloads. And I would be like, why is this so hard? And I had one of my mentors tell me, Jason, this is always about everything that you do in life is about other people, except for when you come and do this. He said, make it about these other people. Put yourself in their shoes. And I went, oh my gosh, they're scared out of their tails. Like they're wondering if they're going to be able to pay their rent and if they're going to have a job. And I'm coming in being an arrogant jerk, which is not my heart at all. But just like, thinking everybody thinks like me and everybody drive. No, 90% of the world is built on certainty. And so you can build certainty while painting that next stage as exciting change, modifications. And there's a process that we go, I'll talk about it at your event, called WIFLMs. How we do this is we go in, every person in the business, we go in and we say, why are you working here? And if I gave you Mickey's magic wand and waved it over your job, where would you be in 5 years? And the stories you hear are unbelievable. Like, I'd like to bring my family up from Mexico. I've got 3 family members, blah, blah. I'd like to get my grandma in for this heart surgery, blah, blah, blah. I've never traveled around. One of the heartbreaking ones was this guy that was like, we asked this question and he started crying. And I'm like, what is that? Like, he goes, I want to take my son to the finals, the NBA finals. Why are you crying? Because my dad just passed away. And he said on his deathbed, he said the one thing he regretted was never being able to take me to the NBA finals. And so you set things because you care about people, right? You set them up and you say, okay, here's what we're going to do with your position. You do X amount of things. We're going to get you NBA finals tickets. We're going to get you season tickets. We're going to, blah, blah, blah. Like, those are the things that people forget about in the day of AI and technology, and push the customer away from me. No, the closer you bring human beings and care about them and use your machine called a business to meet their dreams, everything else happens in alignment, right? So it's really caring. Yes, you have to upset the apple cart, and it's not an either or thing. It's being very strategic and specific with other people in mind. Businesses and business owners, and I'll shut up on this one. The only reason a business exists is to serve other people. You have to be very specific about the service. What problem are you solving for that? I'm a servant at that point. I'm not an arrogant, like, oh, look at Jason's suits and where he lives, and he's in a jet, and he's all like, the mistake that a lot of gurus make these days is that they think it's about them, and it's not. It's about the people. What can your system, process, and or business deliver in 3 areas? How much money can I save people? How much money can I make people? And how can I measurably change the equality of their life? That is the magic. That's the only thing that a business exists for, is for those 3 things. And you do it really well. Now you're a servant.
I don't know who would I put in your league as far as the deep level of passion that you carry for everything, the deep level of caring, and the level of momentum that you have that is contagious in your energy. Your experience in M&A is great. Building businesses, rescuing business, turning things around. What you do as far as what you're doing to save human lives also is powerful.
I'm honored beyond belief to be at your event. I just want everybody to know I'm going to be there because he is real. The relationship he has with his wife is real. It's so cute. You put that thing. I thought you were Italian for a minute. That photo that you put up of you and Pam with your shirt up wide open, you had a big hairy chest and stuff. I was like, oh, that's so cute.
That was it. What's crazy is now people, because of iPhones, have pictures of probably the day they met. Back then, where the probability that someone would take a picture before we actually got together that night, and we had a picture of that. So it was just crazy.
That is crazy cool. And your daughter, like I said, everybody that's around you is awesome. I'm honored to be there to add value. And I saw, an opportunity to be able to, help you and your team and take this to the next level, because it's necessary. People are getting screwed all over the place. And if they come to you and anyone on your team, they're not going to get screwed. They're going to get competence, and they're going to get honest feedback, and they're going to have high levels of people working for your success. That's why I'm going to be there.
I appreciate you, Jason. Thank you for tuning into Deal Playbook. If today's episode sparked an idea or gave you an edge, share it, subscribe, or leave a review. Remember, opportunity doesn't wait, it's created. Until next time, keep building, keep scaling, and keep playing to win.